What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Welcome. So we are here today to do the Retha versus Retha video, and I have a special guest with me today. And it is the Movie Man. Welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am so good. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and hang out with us over here at the tribe. So, for those who do not know, the Movie Man is a YouTuber, and he has a YouTube channel where he does reviews and mainly focuses on, as his name will let you know, movies. So, tell us a little bit about your channel, and then we're gonna jump into it, honey.
Yes. I actually started my channel, I believe it was like the end of last May. And people have been telling me for years, I've always been a big movie buff since I was really, really young. I've written movie reviews for years. People always said I should get on YouTube, but didn't really have the confidence, didn't really have the resources all the time. So just so happened everything, suddenly stopped. And
Right.
so all of a sudden I was like, okay, well, maybe I should just go ahead and give this a shot. And so yeah, and so I finally pushed forward and I created my channel, which is as was said, the Movie Man, and it is just a place where I just give commentary on movies. I do movie reviews. I do the occasional TV show review and recap. I also do trailer reactions and things like that. And yeah, it's just a place to really just give my experience with movies. Movies have been something over the years that has just really taught me a lot. It's the escapism of them and the experience of them. It's been very impactful in my life. So my channel can be a way of showing that and kind of like, showcasing that part of myself to other people.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And hey, Sakina, I see Sakina's in the house. Hey, girl. Abby, my mod, is here. Also, one of my members of the Just Us League. Honey, it's been a fun and exciting day for that. But Abby, can you do me a favor and make sure you drop the Movie Man's link periodically so people who are coming in can make sure that they go check him out. And y'all go check him out, okay? He's a definitely a good follow. And again, if you're into movies and all that good stuff, I'm sure that he'll hit one that you are watching. And so I saw that you had done your review on Respect. And so that's where I said, well, let me see if he wants to come on and kind of, we can kind of bounce back and forth about, what we saw, what we thought, how we felt about it. So first of all, let's just start with overall, how did you feel about Respect? We'll start with Respect and then we'll do Genius. Overall, how did you feel about Respect?
So going into Respect, I had kind of, I don't want to say low expectations, but semi-low expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of I was like trying to I was trying to kind of balance out how I felt about it. I was kind of excited about it because this is Aretha Franklin, this is the Queen of Soul we're talking about, so I was excited for that. And then this is something that obviously got pushed
right.
as of 2020, so it kind of amped up the excitement that I had for it. But I still was trying to, like, just in case it didn't live up to my expectations, I was still trying to go in thinking like maybe, let me just kind of keep it balanced. And so overall, I would say I actually enjoyed it as far as the experience of it. I think there are some things you can kind of get into the technical quality of things, but then there's also about like how it makes you feel and kind of how it resonates with you. And so my expectations weren't super, super high. Being in the theater and having that experience with my mask on, mind you, but being in the theater with other people and seeing kind of their response to it, it really like heightened the experience. And I think a lot of that is just the power of Aretha's music and her lyricism and all of that. And so overall, I would say I enjoyed it for the most part, but I still see the flaws of it as far as biopics and kind of the formula of that and how limited it is, especially when you only have, maybe 2.5 hours to 3 hours to tell an entire person's life or even a part of somebody's life.
I'm with you, and I think I agree with a lot of what you just said. My expectations were high for Jennifer Hudson. I love her. I've always loved her. I've been a fan since her audition on American Idol. Like I have, because I used to watch American Idol, and I remember the audition, and I remember that season, and I have always been a fan, and I've always been here to see her win. So I definitely felt like she could play the part,
right.
But I was not confident about the screenplay per se. You know what I'm saying? And so that's kind of where I was with that. As you know, with that, I feel the same way. I feel like sometimes we do a disservice to people by trying to tell their story in that window. I think, you know, I don't know if you remember this or not. Spike Lee got a lot of pushback when he did Malcolm X because it was so long. And they were like, because, you know, now it's kind of the norm for movies to be over 2 hours. But when he did Malcolm X, that wasn't the norm for movies to be over 2 hours. And he got a lot of pushback. But in hindsight, you know, I can appreciate that he said, listen, I'm going to take that risk because there's too much here not to tell the story right. You know what I mean? And so I feel the same way about that. Now let's flip it to Genius, which again, I purposefully didn't, or purposely I should say, didn't see Genius until after I saw Respect. And for me, the reason why I did it is because I knew the family was like, oh, we don't want you to support this version. Wait for the movie to come out. This is the movie that Aretha wanted to tell. And so I feel like in my mind, I feel like I was sort of respecting her wishes. I was like, all right, I'm going to watch it. I just ain't going to watch it first, you know? And of course, the movie was supposed to come out long before it did. It got pushed back because, of course, everything else that was going on. So how did you feel about Genius? And we'll get into the specifics, but just overall, how did you feel about Genius?
So it was kind of a similar sentiment. I understand as far as the family, that's not the end all be all, but it still is kind of like, you know, it makes you feel a little uncomfortable, kind of awkward because it's like, well, they don't like this. So it's like, what kind of story are we telling? I think a piece of it, if I'm just being honest, with Cynthia Erivo and the whole controversy about.
Yes, I was gonna say that too. I'm not a big Cynthia Erivo fan, and so I think that was part of it for me too. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. No, I agree. And so it was like you're kind of going in with that, you know, some of the things she said, and then a lot of the controversy about, you know, just about this whole trend of Hollywood casting Black Brits as opposed to Black Americans, and that whole thing, and that kind of thing. And then for me, because I think the way I found out about her doing Genius Aretha, it was just like this picture of her with this outfit on and this wig on and this makeup. And to me, when I saw the picture, it kind of looked like a parody. I was just like, really bizarre. Whereas the pictures of Jennifer Hudson that I had seen, she at least kind of had the look.
Yeah, I feel like she definitely did.
Yeah, and so it was just throwing me. I was like, I don't know what this is about. So I think all in all, I really wasn't prepared to see it. I wasn't really that interested in seeing it. And I think just from what I was hearing, I didn't have much of a desire to see it initially. Now, seeing this after Respect, it kind of like renewed my interest. I think I tried to watch it maybe sometime before that because it's actually on Hulu right now. And I wasn't really clicking with me. I ended up falling asleep, and you know, it just wasn't it for me. So then seeing it, actually trying to revisit it after actually seeing the film, I think I had maybe a greater appreciation, at least just wanting to see how the story was told in 8 hours as opposed to like 2.5.
Right.
So going into that, I think I was able to I just think I appreciated the fact that we had all this time to get into the specifics, into the nuances, into her experience as a songwriter and her challenges trying to carve out a musical lane for herself, and her relationships and all those kind of things. So I think the storytelling aspect and the details that is there, I think that's the part that I appreciated the most. And I think some of the casting was good. Some of it was not, and we'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, just overall, it actually resonated with me a little bit more than I thought it would. And I walked away, feeling good about it. Cynthia Erivo's performance, I'm kind of on the fence about that piece of it, because I feel like, in my opinion, the first half, like the first 4 episodes, I felt like her performance, it just felt like she was sedated the entire time. I just kind of felt like I wasn't.
She's kind of going overboard, playing that quiet, meek kind of thing.
Yeah, and I understand that piece is true because you have to understand we're talking about the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and the role that Black women, played in that society. It was not easy, and you kind of had to position yourself a certain way. So that part is important. And then if you factor in her traumatic experiences and all that, of course, you're not going to just be like, you're not going to have all this, personality, kind of put yourself out there like that. But to me, it just felt like it was like this the entire time. There wasn't a lot of spark to the performance in the first half.
I can agree. So two things. Sakina says, wait, what did she do? So there was a lot of controversy surrounding Cynthia Erivo. I do not have the exact quote. Xavier, if you were still in the chat, I'm sure you could put specifically what she said. But she made some defamatory comments about Black actresses. I believe that happened around the time she was being cast to do Harriet Tubman. And that was a big issue that I don't want to misquote her. I do not remember the exact quote, but I know that she made some nasty comments about Black actresses. And then like the Movieman said, there's this controversy about casting British actors to play, British Black actors to play Black roles here in America when a lot of those roles are already very limited. So there was just some controversy about her. And then although I don't give a damn about who she's sleeping with, but let's not forget the scandal that's gone over her and her girlfriend, Lena Waithe. But that ain't my business who you sleep with. But there was some scandal attached to that too, honey. It was a reference to all Americans. Okay, it wasn't just black women. Okay, but she made some comments. Xavier, if you remember, put it in the chat, please, because I don't want to misquote the woman. Yeah, do you remember exactly what it was, Movieman?
Well, I was going to say, Xavier mentioned it, I believe, but it was like this kind of like thing about mocking American Black ghetto accents and things like that.
Yeah.
That was a piece of it. And so it's kind of like, so is the perception of.
Yeah. So that left a nasty taste in some people's mouth. People had a problem with her playing Harriet Tubman, which I thought that movie was horrible. That's another conversation for another day. But I thought that movie was just horrid. And again, I ain't going to put it all on her and her acting. I think the screenplay, I just think the way that role was written it was horrible. So that didn't really help a lot. So there was that. And Aunt Didi, you're right. It's not necessarily a fair comparison to compare a 2-hour movie with an 8-hour. I get that, but we're just going to look at this because one of my biggest frustrations, I love biographies. I love autobiographies, and I get it. I love reading them. I love watching, and I like documentaries. I'm a history nerd, so I like documentaries. Hollywood is great, but I definitely like to get the real feel of it. But my biggest complaint or frustration whenever I come out of any type of a biography is I should not leave with more questions than I went in there with. And I feel like the movie Respect left me with a lot more questions. Even stuff that I thought I knew, I came out going, well, hell, that ain't what happened. You know what I'm saying? So I understand that time-wise, that Genius had a better opportunity to tell the story. But it's also the fact that Genius was based on a book that was not authorized by Aretha Franklin. And you always run, which I'm actually going to listen to the book. I have the book already downloaded in my Audible, but I didn't want to listen to the book until I, watch the movie. Because again, you get more out of the book than you get out of the movie too. So for me, I know that the risk that you run when you get into that unauthorized piece is then you run the risk of how much of it is true. Yeah. Like, who are you interviewing? Who are you talking to? And the one thing I always say about people, especially celebrities and people like that, if you are not ready to tell the whole story, then you're probably not ready to tell your story. And again, I'm not saying you got to tell us the whole kit and caboodle, but there are certain things that I feel like are obvious, things that people are going to want to know. And if you're not ready to tell those stories, then you probably, and listen, you don't have to tell your story. There's no rule that says you have to do a biography or autobiography. And it's okay to say, you know what? I'm a private person and I don't really want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So I think that, again, I didn't read the book I didn't read Respect, but I That's just my opinion on it. You know what I'm saying? And Pacino, I am going to do that when I watch, after I listen to the book, I am going to go back and look at Uptown Nay's. Nay Robb is another great YouTuber. She reviews books and she is hilarious. When she's done a lot of, she does mostly biography. She's done a couple of fiction, but she does a lot of biography. She does a lot of like Motown and, you know, black people, you know, famous black people. She's done some really good ones. And like I said, they're hilarious. They're real. I mean, you know, because she gets into the nitty gritty, honey. And she did this. She did the book. So I'm definitely going to go back and look at her videos after that. I mean, after I listened to the book. So, all right. So that was how just original, just like our overall, how we felt. Now, let's get into some of the specifics. I'm going to try to save some of the obvious things that we want to get into, but let's start with her mama. Now, in the movie Respect, there was a lot of question because where the movie started didn't give you any introspection on their marriage, what happened, what went wrong. We sort of come into the point where he has custody of the kids. The relationship is very salacious. I mean, salacious isn't the word I'm looking for, but very, you know, very combative is probably the word I'm looking for. But we don't really know why. Like you get the impression that he cheated on her, but you don't get anything deeper than that. And then she dies, which we still don't really get a whole lot of. Was she already sick? Was it like what happened? We still don't get a lot of that. And so again, that was one of the first parts of the movie Respect, where I said, I'm walking away with more questions than I walked in the door with. How did you feel about how her mother was portrayed in the movie Respect?
I definitely agree with that. It's like we're coming in the, I don't even know if I would say the middle, but really kind of towards the end of the dynamic with, you know, C.L. Franklin and then Barbara, you know, her mother and father. Because we like, I guess what I would have thought going off of maybe the trailer or just going into the movie is that we were going to, like when they did show Barbara Franklin, she was portrayed by Audra McDonald,
which is a great actress.
Yeah, she's excellent. And so I was thinking we were going to get more of the dynamic of her mother in the household, and then and I didn't know anything about like her father and mother's relationship. So technically I just would have figured however that ended or whatever that piece was in her life, we were going to see that, how her mother inspired her, so on and so forth. But yeah, it's like we see, like when we do, I think one of the first times we see her mother, it's like she's walking up to the house, you know, the C.L. Franklin's just kind of looking at her like, and then the kids run up and, you know, they hug her and everything. And it's like, well, what's the issue here? And we don't really get much more outside of that, especially compared to Genius. And then even when she passed away, they don't say how. I know how, because I know how she did because I, you know, read up and I researched it. But they never get into why that is. And it's like before we even have time to kind of understand her as a character or how she impacted Aretha's life, she's out of here.
Right, she's gone. And I say the same thing. I feel the exact same way. Again, the way she came off in the movie, it almost came off like she was scared of him. Like she was almost afraid to even walk up to, like you saw her pacing before she even, like she was afraid. So again, tell me why, like give me something. And again, you didn't have to give us the whole kit and caboodle, but give me something to give us that foundation to understand. The other thing, and again, you know, a woman not having custody of her children in that time period was not common. Right. So again, what happened that he had custody of the kids and she did not? And again, you just want to know, well, what happened? Because it wasn't common for a woman to not have custody of her children, you know? And so it just made you wonder. Now, the flip side of that, of course, is Genius. And again, I understand Genius had way more time. They basically dedicated a whole episode of Genius to the flashback and us understanding the backstory. And so I'm not going to focus so much on the fact that we got more information because, again, it's not fair to compare that. But I am going to say I still feel like the movie could have given us the backstory that, you know, he was this small town preacher down in Tennessee. They were, you know, obviously once happily married. She was very much stand by your man. I'm, the first lady. I believe in my husband. I'm here to support him. Very much that. A little naive, I would say. That's how it was portrayed. A little naive. I'm not even going to get into the scandal. We'll get to the scandal in a second. But just that dynamic. I feel like if we had just gotten a 2-minute flashback of happier days, and we didn't, again, if they didn't want to get into the scandal, they didn't have to get into the scandal. They could have just talked about his infidelity.
Right.
They could have just given us that one scene where we saw where she confronted him about cheating on her and how they got into that fight. And he was like, well, if you gonna leave, but you're not taking my kids. I feel like that would have given us that insight to say, okay, that's how we got here.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Because actually, and my mom, I saw this with my mom. And so her perception actually, which kind of shows you maybe how flawed that piece was. But my mom actually had the perception that, like, did she like abandon her kids or like desert them, or and the sad part is that that's not the case. There was more to that as far as C.L. Franklin having a lot of influence, a lot of connections, a lot of money. He was the one who kind of had the position of power in that situation. With me. But the problem is the way that they did that. My mom literally thought she abandoned her kids, and
right. That's the impression I got. I got the impression that there was some mental illness, just because of how nervous she was and the pacing, and she just seemed off, And I thought I said, well, maybe she dealt with some mental illness, and that's why she couldn't take care of her children. That's what I walked away from the movie with.
Yeah, and so I think that's kind of the issue. Like, if we don't understand the entire dynamics of what led to the demise of the relationship, then it's just like, oh, maybe she just said one day, oh, I don't feel like taking care of my kids anymore.
That's honestly, that's the impression I sort of walked away from. So Tracy, all right, so I bounced back and forth from the comments. So Tracy was saying that Aretha did not authorize respect. She wrote a book called From These Roots. Okay. I promise you she ain't tell all of that in the book, but respect. I will say this. I know she approved the screenplay for the movie Respect. Yeah. I know she was involved in that part of it. And that's why the family supported the movie and not the Genius, the miniseries. Right. Now, the thing that was alike about from the movie and the miniseries was they absolutely showed the influence of music on between Aretha and her mom. We in both movies we got the scene at the piano. In both movies we got that. In both movies I think we got her chasing the mother's car. Didn't we get that in both?
Yeah, it was both. I think maybe in the series, I think who they showed her running after was who they showed her running after was like a woman who had almost become like a stepmother figure to her.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. She was a gospel artist that her dad dated for a long time.
Yeah, I believe it was Kara Ward.
I think you're right. I think
that's who they were depicting. But like the framework of the scene and her, being upset and running after the car, it was basically the same, just with a different character.
Right. So didn't we also get the visitation as well, her mother visiting her? Yes. I know that was in the movie, but did we get that in the miniseries as well, that her mother I think in the miniseries she talked about it. I don't think we saw her mother, but I think she talked about her mother visiting her in dreams.
Yeah, I think the last thing I remember seeing before her demise basically is like when she's on the phone and she's talking to them and they're basically kind of working out, us having visitation and us, hanging out with them, because in real life they did have occasional visits with her. I think she might have moved, if I'm not mistaken. It was like Buffalo, New York, and so they kind of were back and forth for like summer vacations and things like that. But I don't remember actually seeing after like the big blowout and her being gone from the house. I think the last thing was just her being on the phone and just them talking.
Right. No, I'm talking about when her mother visited her in the dreams.
Oh, you mean that piece?
Did we get that in both? I know we got it in the movie, but I think in the miniseries she talked about it. I don't know if we saw it, but I think she talked about it.
Yeah, I don't think it was anything as far. I don't think because it was. I'm trying to recall my
Right,
mind.
I'm trying to remember too.
Yeah, but no, I don't think we actually like see her again as far as Aretha and her impact. Don't quote me on that, but that's just what I recall.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think I feel the same way. I think it was I think she talked about it. I want to say in one of the scenes with James Cleveland, which of course we got way more of her relationship with James Cleveland in the miniseries. Because in the movie, I don't even think people knew who the hell. I mean, if you didn't know who he was, did you even know who he was? And such a great actor playing James Cleveland. Actually
Yeah.
in both versions. But I think she had a conversation with James Cleveland about it in the miniseries. But in the movie, we actually saw Audra McDonald coming to her when she was, have that long time of being drunk, I guess. Because to be fair about Aretha Franklin, she may not have shared everything, but she did share a lot. In respect, they got into the alcoholism. They alluded to her depression. They alluded to the depression. They dug deeper in the series, but they did allude to it in them. And, she talked about the abuse of men. So she did share. I'm not going to act like she didn't tell us nothing. She did. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. I was going to say, I actually was surprised by some of the things they did share in the film, because the whole thing with her children, which I know we're going to talk about, but I thought they were going to completely bypass that. We were just going to see her with kids and that was going to be it. So the fact that they even did address it, and there was a literal shot of her with, there was a shot of her as a girl with showing something. I was like, oh, like we're actually giving we're actually showcasing that. I was actually shocked by that, because there are ways that I don't know, there are ways you can really sanitize somebody's life. And so from what I was hearing, I was worried it's going to be a complete bypass. Like, oh, I grew up and then I had kids. So.
Right. Well, that's actually a perfect segue, because that's the next one on our list is the childhood / pregnancies. So that's actually a perfect segue. So in the movie, they did sort of do that in the movie. They gave us the flashback of her being pregnant, but the movie went from her as a child to her as a young adult and just having 2 kids. And I was like, what the?
Right.
We just got 2 kids running around. We ain't gonna talk about the fact that she had a kid at 30. We ain't gonna talk about that. We're just gonna whoop. But then, of course, the miniseries went deep.
Very.
So the movie version gave us the impression that someone who used to come to his home for his infamous Saturday night parties violated her. The miniseries gave us the impression that it happened while she was on the road with her father, traveling in the summer during his gospel caravan. Now we know what the rumors are. The rumors are that daddy is the daddy. That's the rumors. And to allude to the fact that it happened on the road, and it happened both times that she was on the road, I think was the miniseries nice way of kind of saying it could have been the daddy, because that was the time that he was away from her and they were alone, and you saw them sharing a hotel room. But it also said, listen, but she was kind of losing her mind, because that first time she sort of got tricked into drinking the alcohol and all of that. But when she went back the second time, she was with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's how it was portrayed. But then, in the miniseries, it was portrayed as somebody in the home violated her. And I'm not going to say, somebody at the party. But then that begs to the question, so how did it happen a second time? Was it the same person the second time? Like, I don't know. You what you got?
Right. No, I definitely, the miniseries does this thing. And I think when it comes to, I think when you don't have a clear answer on something, you have to kind of play around with the idea of it. So you're not saying like, this is what happened.
Right.
And I think in the miniseries, they do this thing like when the grandmother finds out that she's pregnant. And I think she almost says something like, how could this have happened? Or who could have done this, basically kind of really expressing shock. And CL in that scene, it's almost like he's like, well, God has a way.
Right.
Like, I was like, And it was like this really weird reaction that he had. So
Sorry, let me turn my ring off.
No, you're fine. But it's almost like you would think as a father you would be kind of like angry or disappointed or kind of like how could the it was almost like and he kind of went into his stance as a pastor or a preacher and it was just like, well, God, was going to show us the way.
Right.
And I was just like, oh, I think that's their way of kind of maybe saying like that was his way of kind of like, okay, let's brush over how this happened.
Right. Nothing to see here. Keep walking, folks. Nothing to see here. Because that was my question. That was so when I say as a kid, I remember reading just a brief autobiography. It wasn't a book. It was like one of those. Matter of fact, I know what it was. It was a brief autobiography, and my parents had bought her anthology, Aretha Franklin's anthology, and in the booklet, it told like her story. And I remember I was a kid then, and I remember reading it going, her daddy was a preacher, but she got pregnant at 13. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember just wondering, so what, because this is how I think, what was the scandal? I know that was like a scandal. Like, what was, and so when I watched the movie, this is one of the questions I walked away from in the movie was like, okay, fine, they want to gloss over the pregnancy, fine, but why are we glossing over the reaction? Like, what was the reaction when they found out that this 13-year-old child had gotten pregnant? Because you may not have known. Let's go with the story that they told in the movie. You may not have known that somebody was tipping in her bedroom and during your party, but you had to know somebody was tipping. Yeah. And it seemed like there was no conversation, no reaction. And it just seemed like C.L. Franklin just seemed to have gotten away with so much as to be this preacher that was so well respected. And it just seemed like he got into so much. You know what I'm saying? And so in the miniseries, like you said, it was like, thanks, Danny. It showed like, oh, well, this is God blessed us, and this gonna be the best baby, and we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and it's gonna be our baby. We're gonna take care of the baby. He gonna belong to all of us. And I was just like, that was a little too easy for me. So when you add in the scandal, which is the reason why he moved to Detroit to begin with, and again, the miniseries went into this to show he had gotten was the child like 13 or 14? 12. Wow. He had gotten a 12-year-old pregnant back in Tennessee, which was part of the reason why they had to leave and go to Detroit to begin with. And the wife did leave him and all of that. But, he sweet talked his way. They got back together, which was all the more reason why when she found him cheating again in Detroit, she was like, I'm out and I'm taking my kids with me. But of course, that didn't work out so much. How you feel about that element being added?
First of all, just the fact that I can't obviously I can't relate, but it's just in my mind, I find it very difficult to see where in your brain the thought of having it's like even the thought of it is like kind of making me ill. But it's like, where in your mind does it justify a 12-year-old child? A child. I know people like to say like, and even the circumstances, that's not sex.
No, that's a violation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a violation.
That's right. Yeah.
And there's something very there's something very sinister about a child having those kind of experiences, and then having experiences they don't fully understand. Their bodies haven't fully developed any of that. And then the experience of pregnancy and childbirth, and then raising the children, like that in itself, just it really disgusts me. But like you said, the miniseries really dives deep into that, and to me, it was a little bizarre. I mean, these are the circumstances because I know what the timeline is, but it's awkward to me that the infidelities or the continued infidelities was her breaking point, but assaulting and impregnating a 12-year-old child somewhere in your mind you could get past that. I'm just kind of like, ooh, I don't really understand that, but I was shocked by them including that, especially the way that they did, and that whole piece of her mother going to, I guess you would call, I don't know if the carpenter, I don't know if they like literally made the cribs or whatever, but it was
well, that's how the mother found out.
The cradles and the cribs, and she was like, well, whose is this? And,
Right.
and she was like, oh, that must have been an accident. She's like, but why would he order 2 cribs? And then her going and seeing, like, that was
a lot. I mean, I probably had my mouth open. I was like, oh. And so I see what you guys are saying in the comments. Tracy, I agree. I mean, China White, I agree. Some of this we are looking at with the 2021 lens, like teenage pregnancy is nothing new. That absolutely. And even young kids getting pregnant is nothing new. But I think the fact that we saw one again, and I'm not trying to, put him on a pedestal because he was a pastor, but the fact that he had a unwed teenage daughter in his home, and it happened not once but twice. Both of them under the age of, she was under the age of 16 both times. No, social services wouldn't have necessarily been involved at that point because, again, it was a little different. Like nowadays, that would be automatic. Like a teacher would have to probably, like as a mandated reporter, I would probably be like, wait a minute. But so I agree. We are looking at this with a little bit of a lens of 2021. But I think some of this, even then, I think people would have had questions. Yeah. The grandmother certainly had questions, at least in the movie. The grandmother wasn't okay with it. She certainly had questions. But I also feel like a 12-year-old being pregnant, I don't think that was, especially since they didn't make her get married. Now, I could see if they did a whole shotgun wedding situation, but, now Pacino Blue said that this wasn't brought up in the movie, but her sister also had children as a teenager. And that's, and you're right. They took whoever, and I know that somewhere along somebody by the name of Eddie, that name came up somewhere along the way. But whatever it is, they took that, whatever, they took it to their grave. Like that secret went to the grave. That secret went to the grave. But yeah, so that was something that I walked away from the movie feeling like, and I get it. Rita never said who the daddy was, and so that may be a story she never was really willing to tell. But I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, apparently, I don't know if it was like published. I don't know if that's the right word, but basically, in her handwritten wills, she mentions that the father is someone named Edward Jordan. And so, and it mentioned, I want to say it references him as being the father of both. I think what adds to the mystery and the scandal of the first child is that she named her child after her father, Clarence. And then the fact that he had already impregnated, had already assaulted and impregnated this 12-year-old girl. It just so happened to be the same age. Like it's just.
Yeah, it wasn't a good look. It just didn't. It wasn't a good look. It wasn't a good look. And the other thing that I always, and this has nothing to do with the movie because I wouldn't expect this to be a part of the movie, but I always wonder what happened to that child. Like I always wonder what happened to. I never really did the research to find out, but.
I think when I was reading, I saw somewhere, I don't know what the relationship was, but I want to say when she got older, I saw somewhere that said that Aretha would like send her money, or I want to say her money in her will or something like that. After I'm going to verify that, but I literally read that and I thought that was so interesting, and I wonder what what the relationship would have been, because, and then I don't know, even as an adult, to kind of look at that situation and, how do you make sense of that? But from what I saw, it was basically she was aware and just felt the need to support her in some way or another.
Right. So Shirley said that Aretha did mention who the father was. She wanted to make sure that he didn't get any of the money that was for her son, because I think her son was mentally disabled. Now, I do know that she had a son that had some challenges. Yeah. Was that one of her 2 oldest sons though, or was that one of her sons by one of her other relatives? Because Rita had like 4 or 5 kids altogether, right?
Let's see, was it 3 or 4? I believe so.
So I mean, was that the oldest sons, or was that because I know a couple of her, at least one of her sons had drug problem. Like there was some. I mean, again, that's a whole nother story. I'm not gonna, you know, but there was some. It was the oldest son. Okay, so the oldest son had a disability. Again, y'all, I feel I have my opinion. I'm not gonna cloud this with what my opinion is. But I mean, there's something to be said about the child having a disability. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The oldest son has the disabilities. Okay. She had 4 sons, right? I thought it was 4. I thought she had 4 altogether. So that's a perfect segue into the daddy then. I don't think all of her children are alive. I don't think all of her children are alive. Maybe they are. I thought one of them had died though, but maybe not. I could be wrong. I thought one had died, but I could be wrong. But I know one had a drug problem at one time. They might be clean now, but I know one had a drug problem at one time.
Yeah, and I was going to say that Clarence, the eldest, the very first child she had, that was the one who had the special needs.
Okay, that's the one. Okay.
And kind of.
Yeah, I agree, Lauren. Lauren, that's my opinion. I feel the same way. I believe that that name was thrown out there to satisfy people like me. That's just nosy. I still feel the way I feel about who the daddy is, but that's just my opinion. Exactly. Keep it cute. Me and you on the same page. So that's the perfect segue into the daddy, honey. That's a perfect segue into the daddy. So in both movies, it was very clear the influence that her father had over her life. In both movies, it was clear that there was even a level of fear she had of her dad, of disappointing her dad. Yeah. We saw a couple of times where she sort of, bucked up against him, but for the most part, there was definitely that level of control. That scene that we saw in the movie Respect, where he slapped her, that's a very well-known story. So that was something that had been talked about. That was a very well-known story about him slapping her in front of them execs. I thought it was interesting when he took her and he had her get up and turn around in the movie. He was like, stand up, turn around. Mm-hmm. I'm like, is that how daddy act? Like, I don't know.
Right.
So how do you feel about the dad? Now, of course, the miniseries went way, way, way deeper into it. Even I thought it was interesting with the gospel album, how she didn't even want him to be a part of it. That wasn't so much portrayed in the movie as much. It almost seemed like the total opposite in the movie. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel about the dad?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think both performances were pretty solid. Forrest Whitaker and Courtney B. Vance both excellent.
I think they both did a good job. Yeah.
I would say, and it's not just because of the time. I do think we kind of got a few more nuances in the performance. I thought Courtney B. Vance did like a really excellent job, and I think it's the way he kind of I don't know. It's like how he was able to kind of portray his impact as a preacher, and how charismatic and how forceful and how just kind of like, hey, and really drawing the crowds and drawing these people in. But also just had this side that was very lecherous. Because I'm telling you, they showed those party scenes and he was just whooping it up, having a good old time. And
again, that was consistent in both versions. So that there's a level of validity to that, because that was consistent in both versions about the parties and how scandalous and how a little bit of this and a little bit of that was going on at them parties. We even saw, I believe it was in Genius's version, they even alluded to same-sex couples at the parties being very open in their relationship, which again in the 1950s was not common. Especially at a preacher's house, right? That's not common.
Yeah, I definitely remember in the even in the movie, and they might have showed it in the miniseries too, but I do remember as Aretha was walking down before her father is asking her to sing, like she kind of looks over and she sees these two guys like pawing all over each other and things like that. And so I think they were really getting to the fact that there were no rules. There was no
right.
Like, hey, we're people of the church, and which let's be honest, that's not new.
That ain't new. Yeah, I wasn't surprised by it. I just was like, the blatant that this is what everybody just knew. Like it wasn't a secret. It was just, I mean, I guess it was like one of those worst kept secret kind of things. Like, you know, you everybody and their cousin, like if you came through Detroit, you went to one of CL's parties and anything and everything went down at the party, you know? Like, okay.
And that's crazy, but you know, people have their vices, and I guess it's just one of those things where, like a lot of people, we have a switch we turn on in one environment, and then we have another switch we turn on in another environment.
True.
And I think the tragedy of that is that the lack, or just the complete reckless kind of just this lack of boundaries, this kind of reckless abandon, and just living. However, I think the saddest part of that is that there was no one to really protect Aretha. In that environment, there was no advocate. There was no one who just kind of said like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be here, or, you know, please be careful, or watch out for this and such and such. And I'm guessing, I think it might have been I think it was in the miniseries. It might have been the grandmother who said this, but she was like, if your mother was still alive, none of this would have ever happened, basically. And so by her kind of being placed in C.L. Franklin's hands, she became kind of a victim of the way he chose to live his life, you know, with no rules, with no structure, with no anything. It's like, okay, we're just gonna do what we want. This is my time, and if my child is wherever and doing whatever, then that's not my business. And I think that's really unfortunate. I thought it was interesting how they showcased that.
Right. And that's what I was going to actually say, Shirley, as well, that because Shirley says that some of the preachers didn't associate with CL because of his reputation and was suspicious of preachers who did. And I was going to say CL almost had this mindset that he was indestructible. Like I know no matter what I do and say, my people are gonna still be in them pews come Sunday morning. They still gonna fill up the collection plate, and I ain't really worried. It was, I mean, you saw it throughout the miniseries that he just had this air of untouchableness. Like, you can't touch me, you know. Right. And even before his daughter was a superstar, he had this mindset of, listen, I can do whatever I want up in here, you know. And of course, once Aretha became Aretha, then it was you know, the magnitude of that was, but you know, times 20. And we definitely saw the complicated relationship. And again, not to harp on this, y'all, but if you believe the rumors, it definitely goes back to that complicatedness of my father, but my abuser. And what is this love? Is this the, like that misplaced love, those misplaced emotions, the confusion of it, the, you know. And again, we heard it, and this was alluded to in both versions, that oh, you're his favorite, you know. Yes. You're his favorite, and you know, Aretha is the favorite because all the sisters could sing,
yeah,
but she was the favorite, you know. And again, not to, even if you don't believe the rumors, which are fine, it just shows you that there was just a level of complication, because it's like, I feel like there was a level of resentment, but it was also a level of, I don't want to let him down. Right. You know, it was just like it was that weird balance that she spent her whole life trying to come to some sort of terms with. But we saw it, I mean, again, that threads itself throughout. I mean, her relationship with her father, everything we talk about is going to always come back to that, because that was just so paramount in her relationship. I mean, in her life, that relationship with her dad, which of course, any final words on that? Because we're going to segue into the next one.
The only thing I was going to say is I'm connecting the two pieces, but I didn't realize that James Cleveland had his own kind of sordid history with something.
I had no clue about that. Now that was news to me. I've never researched James Cleveland. And like I said, I hadn't read a book, so I'm sure in the book it's in there. But yeah, I agree. The influence that he had on her life, I had no clue about.
Yeah, so just kind of this a recurring theme, and I understand there you can have a positive impact on people's lives, but also have some really dark aspects to yourself, and things that are kind of done in the dark and behind the scenes. But I thought that was kind of interesting that also, I don't know, with them initially, with C.L. Franklin and James Cleveland having kind of a close, tight-knit relationship initially, how they both had their thing going on.
Right. The fact that James Cleveland seemed like he started his career at Franklin's church,
Right.
you know, and we see in both versions, we see their relationship. So we know that the relationship was there. Of course, the miniseries dug a little deeper, but in the miniseries, we find out that he was sort of a confidant for her. Like she confided in him about the second pregnancy, you know, and when it was time for her, and they didn't make that I don't think they did a good enough job in the movie of making that connection when she wanted to do the gospel album, that's why that church was chosen.
Right.
I mean, in the movie, it almost seemed like she just picked a random church. That's what it seemed like. Right. But that was very calculated that she chose his church. Mm-hmm. Wait a minute. What? James Cleveland adopted his young lover who said Cleveland. Oh my.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go do some research on James Cleveland.
Oh, it's really bad. It's really bad. Bad.
Okay, well that's a whole nother story for another day. Oh my goodness. Putting that on my list, honey. I'm gonna have to go do me. Oh my goodness. I mean, I know who James Cleveland is. I like some of his music, but I've never done any research on him. I might have to now.
Yeah, I only really looked up because of I feel like certain things I watch, if I see certain people's names pop up or certain things that are mentioned, I'm like, okay, what's on Wikipedia? And when I saw like some of the things they mentioned, I was like, oh,
it definitely made me want to learn more about James Cleveland because, like I said, I didn't even realize they had that level of a connection.
Right.
But there was definitely a strong relationship there in both versions. They showed it. I don't know what was up with the wig and the makeup in the movie version for James Cleveland. I thought that was horrible. I was like, why are they making this man look like I thought that was horrible. I mean, I know that's a sidebar, but
I was going to tell you, did you see Auntie Didi said, because I definitely agree with this, and I thought that was interesting too, but Auntie Didi said that in Genius, they hinted that there may have been something.
Girl, we were just getting ready to get there. Auntie Didi, you moving fast, girl. We would get that. Listen, the next play after we got done with her daddy, the next thing on the list is her men.
Okay, my bad.
We're gonna start with MLK.
Okay, I got you.
No, it ain't you. Auntie Didi knows she moving fast. No, I'm just playing. But no, actually, that's where we were going next. Was because again, I think going from her daddy to her lovers is a really good segue. Let's start with Martin Luther King. Now, in the movie, they just showed their relationship as being very professional. She was just very active in the civil rights movement, and that she grew up around him and respected him and was just always there for him. But baby, Genius went there.
They did.
Genius went there. They alluded to the fact that they had a interlude or two, honey. Mm-hmm. Now listen, anybody who's done any sort of research on Martin Luther King, we're not gonna sit here and act like he was a saint and it ain't above him. We're not gonna do that.
Right.
But I did find it interesting that Aretha Franklin was connected. How did you feel about that?
The fact that she just had like some kind of connection with him.
That it might have been romantic.
Yeah, because and I see like some people saying they didn't quite see it. I don't think it was outright like boom, but I thought there was a scene, and I think it was right after she was given like a plaque. It was the outfit that had I remember it was like a turquoise outfit and the tall, short hair, and yeah, I remember like she had this specific outfit on. It's actually the same one. If you've seen a picture of Aretha and MLK, like an actual picture of them during that moment in actual history, they were depicting that same moment, but they show them stepping outside into the alleyway. And it's kind of like just a regular conversation about, I think it might have been talking about activism or just about life, different things like that. But then it's like they would kind of show these way they would look at each other, kind of the conversation and kind of like the, just the way
would giving each other the googly eyes.
Yeah. And then C.O. Franklin walks up and he's kind of looking like, so what's this? And then they kind of like jump up like, okay, well, let's go back, to what we were doing.
But even in another scene before that, when they were at the hotel, and they alluded to that where they said something about both of them working late, staying up late. And I feel like they were trying to allude again. They didn't come right out and say, but I feel like they were trying to allude to maybe they were up late together.
Right. Possibly. Right.
Again, Martin Luther King was no saint. We know that he had extramarital affairs. I ain't saying that it happened. I'm gonna just say that I didn't see it happening, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some validity to the story. Now, do I think they had a relationship? No, but do I think that maybe a couple of nights on the road they was up late having a couple of drinks? And because remember when all this was going on, she wasn't Aretha Franklin.
No.
This wasn't the respect of Aretha Franklin. This was early on. She was trying to, she was making music and stuff, but she was definitely not the hit maker at that time. So we need to stop trying to put bodies on Aretha. Listen, I'm just saying it's what they have said. All I'm saying is I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying if it happened, I'm just saying.
Yeah. It's hard, like when there are so many things, because I mean, people, this isn't new. Like a lot of things get circulated over years and years. Like we're talking like the 1950s, 1960s, and so it's just like things kind of like over time, things kind of like get spoken about, and some rumors become more and more significant. So there's no way we can say for sure, but it's just but then you can't. Like you can't say it for sure, but then you can't completely deny it either. So that's
right. And I feel like those were rumors that were out there, and that's why they just put it in there. I don't think they put it in there just to be salacious, because I feel like it was a rumor, and so they gave us enough to say, but they didn't come right out and be like, boom, And again, like I said, we know that Martin Luther King did what Martin Luther King does, and we know that Aretha was promiscuous as well. So listen. I'm gonna move on from there. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna put it over there, and I'm gonna plop it right down. So, next we see her first husband, who became her manager. Now, the movie alluded to, and that was played by Marlon Wayans in the movie. The movie alluded to the fact that he had, a checkered. That he did. I thought he was a drug dealer. The way they made it seem in the movie, because she was just like, I know what you do, and it doesn't bother me. But the man was a pimp.
Yeah.
And he okay. He was also abusive.
Yeah.
And he was her manager for a while. So the movie, the series went deeper into his, what's the word I'm looking for? His crass tactics being part of the reason why she didn't move faster in her career.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with you, but I was saying, yeah, they kind of, and I think Malcolm Barrett is the name of the actor who portrayed him in Genius Aretha. I thought the whole pimp thing, that definitely threw me, but it's interesting that she kind of traded one form of abuse for another form of abuse. Mm-hmm. It's like you kind of go from the frying pan into the fire. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, it's kind of like, and I've seen that before. I can't think of there have been other stories where it's like the husband and his influence and kind of getting into the middle of the business and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he was the manager, but it's like people, want to deal with the artist. And because of this manager who was just very kind of aggressive and very crass and all that kind of stuff, it then cast a negative light on Aretha as an artist. They're like, look, we don't want to deal with you. Like, what's all this about? Like the whole thing in the hotel room. Like, yeah.
And again, that goes back to both of those scenes were portrayed in both versions. So that scene was portrayed in both versions. So that there has to be some validity to that. That they had the showdown at Muscle Shoals. Mm-hmm. They had the showdown. He came to the hotel. They tore the damn hotel room up, and that's when she left him.
Right.
The first time. That's when she left him the first. Well, I ain't gonna say the first time, but that's when she left him and went back home. And of course, in the movie version, we saw that she was very defiant in her relationship with him. Whereas in the miniseries, her father didn't portray. I mean, he didn't like him, but it didn't seem to be as defiant about it, like, you know, you gonna come begging back, and if you go, yada yada yada. Right, he was Dinah Washington's former boyfriend, right? Right,
Right.
he used to be at the party. So again, like you said, if you look at the parallel again, this is a grown ass man who's known her since she was a child, who was abusive to her, who, you know, there's a lot of parallels there, um you you have to do your research on pimping. Was this considered a regular occupation? No, about as regular as it is today. I mean, there was definitely pimps in the world, but I wouldn't say that it was a respectable line of work. But I think it was one of those things where everybody knew what he did and they accepted what he did, in that, you know, because her father, in both versions of the movie, the father knew exactly what he did.
Yeah.
You
And it
know,
was interesting in the second, not the second one, but the in the film, um, which it threw me because it like escalated so quickly. But that part where he like pulls a gun on him, you know, and like you said, we don't get that level of animosity in the miniseries. Like in the in the film, he was literally about to like bust the cap and possibly go to jail. And I was like, oh, so like what's that about? And I understand some of that has to do with the power dynamic.
yeah,
And them, you know, we kind of see each other, so to speak, you know,
right,
are kind of vying for control of this woman who was kind of central to our lives.
right.
But yeah, as far as Ted, it's interesting because he also, for you know, for good or for ill, he did have an influence on, in a way, as far as her creativity and her experiences. Because I do believe he wrote some songs. He actually co-wrote some songs with her. Now, whether he just slapped his name on that, or whether like he, you know,
Because in the movie, the way they made it seem in the movie was she did it to shut him up.
Right.
And it was basically like a parting gift. Like, you gonna get the little pennies off of these royalties, but you gonna leave me the hell alone. Right. That's how it was. But you're right. His name is on there. So we don't know how much he contributed. You know, it might be a Beyonce thing where he added a ooh and a ah and got some writing credit. And right. Don't come for me to Beehive. Don't come for me. Okay. But it, you know, it may have been legit. It may have been like you said, oh, that's my husband, and you know, I don't want to emasculate him. I don't want him to feel no kind of way.
Right.
Then of course we saw the famous performance over, what was it, Paris, where they threw all the flowers on the stage.
Right.
Now again, that was shown in both versions. So again, you say, well, there must have been some validity to what happened in that scene, and her husband running around the damn stage looking crazy. Right. And that was also, again, we see him physically. That was the first time we saw him physically assault her. Again, it happened almost identical in both versions. So if in my mind it lends validity to, okay, this is probably as close to the story that we're gonna get. Right. Both stories told it. I mean, both versions told it. You know. Then there was the infamous Ebony article, which I need to find that. I said I was going to go in the archives and find that. I know it's probably real easy to find now because it was mentioned in both versions. But I said I need to go back and read that damn Ebony article. They did. I mean, not Ebony, Time. I said they tore her up in that article.
I was shocked about that. And I mean, it's not surprising because if you really look at journalism and the press and all that, they, you know, that's their thing. I've read different stories where like you sit down and you like say all this stuff, and then they just kind of like chop all these different words and these different things, and then they just kind of present their interpretation of what you have to say, not painting the whole picture. So although like I wasn't surprised by that being done, but it still caught me off guard, especially with what was actually said.
Yeah, I mean, in the reality, again, I haven't read the article, but based on what we saw, they weren't wrong about a lot of stuff they said. It just was very surprising to me that they put it in an article and they printed it. Now I don't want to go down the race bucket right now, but do you think that had that been Barbara Streisand, would they have printed that story that way? Do you think it was the Black woman and we're going to tell it, we're going to be salacious? Because Time magazine, I mean, some of that stuff that was in the article, you're like, really, Time magazine?
Mm-hmm. Somebody said they tore her up and she hosted them. Like literally had sat these folks down,
cooked her good fried chicken for him.
Like we sitting down like we good friends, you know, at home and this and that. It's just like nope. But you have to kind of consider that, and like I said, we can't always say for sure, but obviously there are always going to be what's the word? There's always going to be biases if we are going to consider race. And it's always easy to paint a different picture of a Black artist versus a white one. Even I don't know, even if you kind of consider, even if we think about the whole crossover thing and how kind of like how Motown and their thing was like crossover artists, which was basically appealing to white audiences. And it's like you basically had to snatch all the soul out of your music and your sound and all this kind of stuff to appeal to white audiences and things like that. So I think I think there may have been some kind of unconscious bias somewhere in there as far as wanting to highlight the negative aspects of this Black singer. It's very possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ted in the mini series they go a little bit deeper, and it shows that Ted went off script, and he sort of, you know, had side conversations and said stuff, not realizing that how the time writer was going to take it. Now in the movie they didn't really show that so much, but in the miniseries they absolutely made it seem like Ted sort of, but some of that stuff wasn't Ted. I ain't gonna put all that on Ted. That Ted was a motherfucker, but I ain't gonna put all that on Ted. Right. You know, some of that was them again. I feel like the part about the elevator and him hitting her, that was Ted, but it wasn't Ted talking to them. It was Ted being Ted. You know, some of the other stuff in there about things about her father. You know, like again, I just wonder how deep because the story was supposed to be about the up and coming, the future soul or whatever. They weren't calling it soul then or whatever. I don't know. For me, I just think that was a moment of, in the 1960s, would they have done that to a Barbra Streisand? I don't think they would have. To me, that article came off very salacious. And maybe I'm putting time on too big of a pedestal, but again, I don't know. I just think that was very, very, and it shocked me because I didn't know. Again, that was something I didn't know about, so that really shocked me when I was like, Time Magazine did that. Like if it had been, what was the equivalent back in the day of like People Magazine or something, then I'd be like, oh, okay, okay. But Time, I don't know. I was just like, child.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because Time has a certain prestige to it that other magazines doesn't have. Like some magazines are just kind of like, oh, this is celebrity gossip or something that would have presented the Time. Because when I think of Time Magazine, I think of the cover of Dorothy Dandridge as Carmen Jones. Mm-hmm. You know, very significant to put her on the cover of that, and I don't remember, as far as I know, the article being salacious or anything like that. So you would think there would be some level of integrity, but I guess they just said bump it.
God, I guess not. But yeah, I would have said the same. So again, that article, I think, changed a lot of how she chose to deal with the media for the remainder of her career. And I don't blame her.
At all.
I do not blame her at all. Something you mentioned a second ago that was addressed which is a small thing, but it was addressed in the miniseries, was why she never signed with Motown. Because again, that was a big thing, that she never signed with Motown, coming out of Detroit, being friends with a lot of those people from Motown. You know, we saw her relationship with Smokey Robinson. But her dad basically like, no, we're going to New York. Like, we're going to Columbia. Like, no. And I almost feel like, again, it was a race thing. It was, Berry Gordy can't do right by my daughter. You know, he don't have the skills. He doesn't have the skill set to do right by my daughter. I that's the impression I got off of him.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think part of it was, I'm sure at the time it wasn't established yet. And so it's just like, why would I? And there are a lot of people who still have this same kind of mindset, even if you, just to use a parallel, even if you kind of look at, you have some very prolific kind of A-list Black celebrities who don't talk to Black press. but they'll talk to white press based on like their reach, like Vogue and Elle and all these publications with this massive reach, but we'll skip past the black journalists and the black press and things like that. And that's why it was so significant when Halle Berry was like, no, like, can we not skip the these people with these black platforms and things like that. So
Right.
So I kind of think that it was kind of it is kind of a bias in and of itself. It's like, yeah, I want to support black, black is, black support and black unity, but you can't do for my daughter what these white folks can. And for a lot of people, that's a similar mindset.
Now, the reality though, the situation is we deal with that even today. That's still something that it's that whole, white is right mentality. When I say we, I don't mean me and you, but we still deal with that today, So you're absolutely correct. Shirley says, didn't Motown sell his CL sermons? They may very well have sold his sermons, because remember, people weren't running to him to sell his sermons like he felt like the talent he had in Aretha. So I don't know that to be one way or the other, honestly. But if they sold his sermons, I could believe, because it was a local situation. Like, it was local and it was a deal. And I feel like, that was probably what he could do. But he definitely had a bigger vision for his daughter. I mean, we saw that, in the mini series, we saw where he made her drop out of school and was like, I got bigger plans for you. Like, okay, you're pregnant with your second child. Don't worry about the teacher saying that you're smart. We're going to get you singing, and that's going to be your meal ticket. That's what you're going to do.
Yeah, which I thought was unfortunate, because she never, in the end, she had success. So it's not like she technically missed out on anything. But I think it was unfortunate that the teacher was basically saying how gifted she was and how intelligent she was, and she held a lot of promise.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're not gonna do that. So
right, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Yeah, exactly. So then we see the next relationship. So she finally walks away from Ted. She gets him out of her life. The next person we see her with now. The movie said that he was her road manager. The miniseries, and this is a small thing, but the miniseries, he was a friend of her brother's who had a jewelry company or something, made jewelry or something like that. In the series, he was played by Clifford Harris, child. I saw the eye roll. Now, I don't know if it's a big deal to say whether he was really her road manager or whether he was, because in the movie, it made it seem like it was very quick. Like she divorced Ted and was like, come here, you. But in the miniseries, it looked like she moved a little bit slower. It wasn't as fast of a pace. So how do we feel about, and then of course and again, they had more time, but in the series, he was around. We saw a different dynamic of that relationship. So how do you feel about this second guy, that they showed her with?
I kid you not. When I was watching the miniseries and Clifford screen, I literally yelled out loud. I was just like, who, what, when, why? Like,
I saw him and I was like, who did this? Who did this?
I want to square up with whoever said, yes, that is, out of all these actors that we have, T.I./Clifford, that's the one who we need to throw in here. And I just the entire time, and we do have, and I'm not hating, because we do have rappers, who do act pretty well. Is T.I. one of them? I don't think so. And so every time I kept hearing, yeah, sugar, ooh, sugar, I couldn't take it seriously. So that one, I'll be honest, that one was a tough part. It kept taking me out of it personally. I think that I'm not aware of the actor's name, but the actor who portrayed Ken in the film, to me, I preferred him.
The way he played it. Mm-hmm.
I didn't see enough of him, which was unfortunate. But the little that we did see, we saw that he was kind of the complete antithesis to Ted White, very much a
right.
So I appreciated that
We saw again. This was the time period where she got sober, where she stopped drinking. In both versions, we saw that. I think in the T.I. version, we saw that he sort of gave her or helped her with, a sense of self. Like that was the whole, 70s, and that's when she got the afro and was, she was sort of demanding certain things from the record label. I don't know if we got that so much in the movie version, but I do feel like because we'll get to the fact that we didn't even get to the third marriage in the movie, but I think out of the three relationships we saw, it seemed like Ken was probably her most healthy based on the way he was portrayed. Right. Was her most healthy relationship. Now we know she had a son with Ted. I'm not sure if her fourth son was his or with Glenn Thurman. I really don't remember.
I don't think she had a son with Glenn Thurman. I think it was with Ken.
With Ken, okay. And I agree. I think her not going to Motown was a good decision. Yeah. I mean, the success that she had with Atlantic. Yeah. Was it Atlantic?
It was Atlantic, who she ended up
having. The success she had with Atlantic and with Muscle Shoals and all that, like that would have never happened under Motown. She would have had some hits under Motown, but yeah, like somebody said in the chat, she'd ended up like Mary Wells. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we know. Listen, that's a whole nother conversation we can have another day. But Berry Gordy was a crook. All right, moving on. So listen.
Hey, talk about it. I understand.
Okay.
Yes.
So there was that. And then the third relationship, which they didn't even portray in the movie because the movie ended at the gospel album, was the relationship with the actor Glenn. And I always say Thurman, but you said Thurman.
I think it is Glenn Thurman.
Thurman. Okay. I don't know why I was going to put an H in it, child, but Glenn Thurman from Cooley High, and probably most people of our generation know him as Professor War from A Different World.
Yes.
And I always heard, I've heard him say multiple times, the reason why his marriage to her ended is because she never came home. So in the movie, in the miniseries, we see she never came home because that was when her dad was shot and was in a coma, and she stayed in Detroit. He said that, he was like, because I think I even saw one quote where he said, well, she forgot she was married. Oh. So that has been, I've seen a couple of times. He doesn't talk about it a lot, but whenever he talks about it, he doesn't really say anything nasty. It's just, hey, she just forgot she was married. Forgot she was married, Yeah.
And I heard
never bring her ass home,
And I heard that they had, I heard they stayed friends, like after they divorced and everything, and that she still spoke fondly. They still would speak fondly of each other. Right. I heard that he was actually present when she passed away. Like he was there with her. I had heard that. I don't know if that's actual, but that he was there. And I don't know if he did an interview, or I saw something to where, like, even when he spoke of her, there was still like a sense of kind of wistfulness and,
yeah.
Kind of
yeah. Because even then he didn't say it nasty. He just said it like, she never come home. Like she forgot she was married, But when you see in the series, and I agree, but I think she used that as an excuse, her father's illness, because you see in the movie where her brother and sisters are like, you can go home.
Right.
Like we got it. Like daddy in a coma. He ain't going nowhere. Like we'll call you if he wake up. Like, and I really feel like the doctors probably told him a long time ago, like he's probably not gonna wake up, but she couldn't. I feel like she couldn't let that go.
Oh no. Yeah, and I imagine I've dealt with a lot of losses, but haven't dealt with anything that resembled a coma or things like that. So I imagine mentally it's difficult to accept that this person is alive, like they're breathing, they're here, but they're just not going to wake up. And I think the like in your mind, it's like you want to just sit there like, you're going to wake up. You're going to wake up. Come on. You're going to wake up. You're going to wake up. So even though I understand the piece about her, probably using that as an excuse to kind of like tap out of the marriage. I can, to some extent, understand that mentally it's just like you want to almost will this person out. It's like they're right there, just wake up. And so then to kind of have to accept the inevitable that they're not going to, I imagine, mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna say I'm with you. I'm not gonna just write it off as, oh, she didn't want to go home. I think she really, again, we know that was just a very complicated relationship, and I really think she just, you know, the worst thing you want to happen is in a situation like that, you leave to go to work and then something happens.
Oh,
that's a guilt that, and so I absolutely can understand it. I mean, again, we're seeing a snapshot. It may have been deeper than that, but it was a lot. And well, no, Abby, she went home. She just didn't go home. she flew back and forth, but it was far in between, right? It was far in between. In both versions, that's sort of where that ended after she divorced him. So I mean, that's not to say that she didn't have, relationships or romantic entanglements for the remainder of her life, but that's sort of where the marriage piece of it ended. But again, what is consistent is that she had a hard time maintaining healthy adult relationships with men.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is, I think when your development is stunted or disrupted in some way, and I'm kind of saying that because mine was, in a sense, it's just basically when you encounter trauma at a young age, it kind of like rewires you a little bit, and it kind of pushes you out of childhood to an extent, and you're forced to kind of grow up in ways that you weren't expecting to. And so I think, and I think it affected her ability to establish those relationships because she was kind of thrust in these environments where it was nothing but adults. And then some terrible things happened as a result. And then just kind of growing up and never fully understanding how to connect, kind of form relationships or navigate relationships in a healthy way, because so much of her early experiences were toxic and were abusive or just had some other piece to it that was not entirely healthy.
Right. We can get into that right now, Pacino. Abby, no, I ain't saying she left and never came back, girl. I'm saying she left to go check on her daddy after he got shot, and she left her husband and her children in LA, and she only flew home. Period. Listen, we saw a snapshot of it, but I think the wear and tear of her flying back and forth to Detroit and LA, the wear and tear, that showed that she, would go to, Detroit and be in Detroit for a month and go to LA for a weekend. Like you cannot maintain a relationship like that. Like it just ain't gonna work, even even with the most love and the best situation. And so anything you want to kind of add about her complicated love life?
I'm trying to think. Was there anything else? I think I think it's unfortunate we don't, like you said, with as far as the movie, we don't really get any further, any deeper into that in the movie. It's interesting because they're also, and that's getting back into this whole rumors thing, but I know that on one of her albums, and I know because I enjoy her cover of the song, but she did You Send Me by Sam Cooke. And then there are also rumors that she might have had some kind of relationship with him.
There were rumors that she had a relationship with Sam Cooke. Yep.
And I think what's difficult is, let's just say hypothetically, like there were no relationships with any, like hypothetically speaking, there were no relationships with any of these people. I think to have these tight knit, close relationships and grow up with these very prolific musical artists, men and women, but especially, and to grow up with them and have these tight knit relationships, it's going to be difficult for there not to be some kind of suggestion of, well, y'all were really close, or y'all grew up together, or you were always around each other. That's always going to be like a kind of question in people's heads. So that was the other one I kind of remembered.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, they and in the series, it alludes to the fact that she had a friendship with him, but they don't really allude to it being sexual. But I did hear that rumor as well. That because Sam Cooke again was one of the artists that came to her father's house and she knew him, and all of that. So we're going to transition into her career, which really went in a multiple. It was a multiple of stages. It started in a church, very much gospel. Her first albums as Little Aretha were gospel albums. Then she went to Columbia where she did covers and she did sort of jazz, what they call them, jazz standards.
Yep.
And then she finally hooked up with the producer
Roy Wexler.
Thank you, Wexler, which changed her life. And that's when she recorded down in Mississippi. And that was down like at Stax Records and all, like Memphis. I'm sorry, not Mississippi. It was Memphis, right? Was it Memphis? Was it Mississippi?
I believe it was.
Muscle Shoals.
Oh, Muscle Shoals. I thought that was Tennessee, but let me see.
That might have been Tennessee. Because I know she recorded at the same studio where Isaac Hayes and Sam and Dave used to record. Like she didn't record with them, but they were all there together. Yeah, Alabama. Okay, somebody saying Alabama. Okay, I'm way off. Down south, shit. Yeah. And that's where she really got her sound. That's where she really was catapulted into, the queen of soul and all of that. And then she ended her career at with my man, the one that did Aretha, that Whitney Houston.
Clive Davis.
Golly, Clive Davis, right.
Arista.
Yeah. Arista, thank you. Arista Records. So yes, her relationship with her sisters, which they got deeper into the series, we saw that she was kind of dirty to her sisters.
I was very surprised by that piece.
She stole that Sparkle song from her sisters. And she stole, what was another song? She stole 2 songs from her sisters.
Yeah.
Son of a Preacher Man.
Was that the one?
It was Son of a Preacher Man, and then it was Sparkle, the Sparkle song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought that piece was really interesting because it's interesting because I said a long time ago, because I didn't know everything. It's I learned a lot as I kind of grow up, and so when I watched Sparkle, I think it was the original 70s film with Irene Cara,
which is a classic. I love it.
It is. And so I love their performances of the song. And so I remember not knowing anything about the soundtrack. I remember I went to go look for like the original soundtrack, and then all I saw was Aretha's covers of the songs, which is not bad. It's just not what I was expecting, because it's not like that. I don't know if they ever recorded or they have that sitting somewhere of the original voices, Lonette McKee and Irene Cara in them. But I remember just kind of being like, oh, so she just recorded all these and we just never heard from the original ladies, which I'm guessing might have been maybe a financial move, or like just kind of like, oh, well, hey, this will sell if we have Aretha Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was not expecting that whole piece with I want to say I think it was Carolyn. That happened with, and then she tried to kind of explain it away, just kind of like, oh, well, I said I was going to do it before, and then I think it was the acting opportunity that might have.
She thought she was going to be playing. Was it Dorothy Dandridge or somebody? No, Donna. She was supposed to be playing somebody, and that fell through. Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just jump back on this, and really, and I don't even know I don't know if the series even tries to depict it maybe as underhanded. I mean, they do, but they don't, because it might have even been more kind of like, well, I can just do this because I can do what I want. They try to kind of explain it more like, oh, well, it just, it fell into my lap and I had already agreed to this and such and such. So, and
I think they did. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
No, I was just going to say, in the series, I think they did a good job of showing Aretha's mindset of, well, they offered to me first.
Right.
Like, I think that was how she justified in her mind doing it was, well, they offered it to me first.
Right.
But they also showed that her sisters helped write some of her hits as well.
Well, absolutely.
So they were, yeah.
Because I mentioned even in my review that that there are a lot of things, because with biopics, like I said before, you basically have to do a checklist structure of the story. You know, you can't like sink into the specific moments of each of these these significant moments in their lives. You can't like sink into each moment. It's like, okay, and we get these montages where it's like, okay, I sang here, and then my number one hit, and then this, and such and such. And so I had said, so we end up missing out on some really interesting dynamics. And I mentioned that Ain't No Way, which is probably easily one of her.
Oh God.
Ain't No Way is just is unparalleled. And then Sissy Houston in the background and the high pitched note and all that. Yeah. So that's one of those, but that was written by Carolyn. And there were some rumors rumors, or it might have just actually been the case, and they didn't get talked about. But apparently, Carolyn was an out lesbian, and that the song, if you listen to the lyrics, it's almost saying that kind of parallels somebody living kind of a hidden life, or like, you know, there ain't no way, you know, for me to love you. You know, like there's no way for us to really live this life the way we're supposed to. Stop trying to be something you're not. You know. Yeah, and just kind of this expression of I love you, but it being these challenges in the relationship. So I said, even that piece, you know, exploring that would have been interesting, you know, and those kind of dynamics. But there's only, unfortunately, so much time to explore that, and not ever really seeing that she might have had potential to do things on her own and maybe as a solo artist, but Aretha kind of being like, yeah, nope, that's mine.
Yeah, and I excuse me, I agree, because like even with the whole Preacher Man song, she didn't want to do it because it was so close to the Time magazine article and the things that they alluded to. She didn't want to be talking about, you know, the only one that could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man. She was like, yeah, I don't know if that's the song to be singing right now. And then it was almost like she couldn't handle the fact that her sister was going to sing the song. So it was like, no, I'll take it back. So I don't know. It just seemed like there'd be a level of jealousy and competition with her sisters. And like the sisters always, you know, they allude throughout the whole movie, they're like, but you were the favorite. Like you were always the chosen one. Like you can give us the crumbs. Like, why do you need the crumbs too? We already getting the crumbs. Why do you have to take the crumbs from us too? And it was a very complicated relationship with her sisters.
Yeah, I was gonna say those dynamics. I can't imagine just because I didn't have that kind of dynamic with my relatives, but I imagine when, you know, you just kind of start off as kids, no one knows what the future is going to be, and then someone already in their childhood, someone is kind of being touted as the favorite, and then they have this massive, unprecedented success, and then trying to kind of step outside of just being this person's sister. Solange has dealt with it. Plenty of other Ashley Simpson, like you have
the Jacksons, Britney Spears' sister.
Yeah, absolutely. I was even thinking about if you've seen Introducing Dorothy Dandridge. There's a little scene in that film, you know, where, you know, Dorothy's talking about, you know, I guess they, you know, she has just gotten her Oscar nomination, and, you know, she's excited and she's happy, and then, you know, her sister is there and she's drinking, and she's just kind of like looking at her as she's, you know, having this moment, and she's like, you know, you think you're the queen of the effing, you know, universe and this and this and that, you know, and she basically starts like screaming like, I'm something too. I'm more than Dorothy Dandridge's big sister. You know, did anybody ever notice that? So I imagine even though you support your sister, you love your relatives and this and this and that, what it starts to say about you, even if you don't believe that, how the press and the outside world can really reinforce like, oh, you're significant. Even with Solange, there's a song she has called God-Given Name. And it was like two stars moving in different directions. And it was a clear reference to her and Beyonce.
Yeah. And I agree. Keep it cute. That took me out too. And now Movieman got me. When I get off of here, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to Ain't No Way. I know. Now I gotta go back and listen. In my mind, I'm like going through the lyrics now. I would have to go back and listen. Because listen, that and when she sang Amazing Grace took me out in the movie. Both parts. And that's the part that head and shoulders above Cynthia Erivo. Cynthia Erivo might be able to carry a tune, but she can't sing. And I know some people don't appreciate Jennifer Hudson's voice, but baby, I do. And when I say she sang the hell out of Ain't No Way, and she sang the hell out of Amazing Grace.
And I tell you, the people and that's why I talk about the experience of it. And I know music is always, going to get you on your feet with any musical biopic. But when I tell you the people in the theater were like, you would have thought we were in church.
Listen, me too. I went to the theater. I went to the theater with my I'm a member of an organization, and we went. Me and some of my chapter sisters. We went. Whoo! We lost our mind, honey. We lost our mind. Okay.
Yes.
But and yeah, it definitely. If that didn't, whoo, you say a Revo can sing, but her voice is not anointed. Yeah, I mean, because listen, Jennifer. See, everybody don't love Jennifer Hudson, but baby, I love her singing. I love her voice. Like I said, I've since American Idol, I've always loved her singing. So we had that dynamic with her sisters. And in the series, it showed that her relationship with her brother was a lot closer than it seemed. It seemed like her brother was almost like her pseudo manager. In the series, we definitely saw the different evolutions, and I loved the fact that the series went at least all the way to her success in the 80s, 90s.
Yes,
I did. I like the fact that we saw that she went to Clive Davis and said, listen, I want to be able to step outside of this box that people have put me in. I want to sing with whoever I want to sing with. I want to do music. I want to do this. And that's what we saw. Because again, I'm old. So I remember those songs in real time. I remember her doing, Pink Cadillac. I remember the video for Pink Cadillac with the spiky hair. I remember her doing the song with the Eurythmics because I love the Eurythmics. Loved George Michael. So I remember, and I love where they ended the series with her doing that opera.
Nessun Dorma.
I remember that. And I remember them saying, listen, she's had 15 minutes to get this ready. Like I remember that outfit she had on. I remember her because I remember I was watching the Grammys and I remember, and that night she was always respected, but that night it really catapulted because to be able to sing opera, it just puts you in a different respect level. And the fact that not only she did it, but she learned the song in 15 minutes and did it. And when they were telling the story of which I never knew what the story of the song, I was like, oh, oh my, okay. I said, okay.
Yeah. And just the thought, because Pavarotti is a legend,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the fact that it was like, well, who do you get to stand in for a legend? Oh, another legend.
Right.
And she took it and tore it out the frame. And Nessun Dorma is already like a really beautiful song, and so I want to feel like most of the people who sung have done a good job, but Pavarotti and then Aretha, and that just kind of and I think they even said in the show like she got like I want to say maybe 1 or 2 minutes standing over.
1 minute, yeah, 1 minute standing over. Like I said, I remember it in real time, and I think because I could appreciate the fact that they let us know as the audience, because again, I remember them saying, hey, they introduced it just the way they did in the movie. Hey, she's had 15 minutes, Pavarotti was sick and she's agreed to step in. And so I think she got a pass on everything not being perfect, but the fact that she did as good of a job as she did. I mean, like I was watching it and I was like, wow.
Yeah. And I even like the transition they did because, of course, Cynthia Erivo was singing initially. And my mom just happened to be walking by. And she was just kind of like, okay, so right there, I don't think I really hear Aretha. She just happened to be saying it because she heard it. And so she was like, yeah, I don't really hear Aretha there. But, I mean, she can sing. And, like, right after she said that, boom, you hear Aretha's voice. And
right.
Like, really smooth transition. And then they show her actually singing, and then we kind of do we're kind of looking back at her life as we're looking back at her life at all these pivotal moments as she has this huge precedented moment, and I thought that was like so well done. It really kind of got to me. Like, yeah, that was good.
Yeah, and so that was pretty much. I want to make sure we covered everything on the list. Yeah, that was pretty much it. I know for me, I enjoyed both for different reasons.
Right.
I think I learned more from the miniseries.
Oh yeah.
But I think I enjoyed the portrayal of Aretha Franklin more in the movie respect.
Yeah, and that was kind of the point I was making. I actually forgot to mention this, but I think it's I can't remember which episode it is. It might have been the second. It was either the end. I think it might have been the end of the second to last episode, or the third to last. But when Aretha finds out about her father being shot, and I even think that whole situation with him and then his home and him being shot like that, there might have even been like.
I was gonna say we'll come back to that. Go ahead, finish your point. And we're gonna come back because I meant to say something of that too. Go ahead.
But when Cynthia, I guess acting wise, she starts to cry, and I'm not trying to be funny. I literally ran it back like 2 or 3 times. I think the tear that fell from her eye was digitized. I think that might have been a CGI tear. I'm not trying to be funny.
You didn't even cry? Oh my.
Like you can go back and look at it, but I promise I looked. I'm like, that looks. I don't know if it might have been the light reflecting off of it, but it looked like they CGI.
I mean, girl, you can't even cry. Listen, I ain't the biggest fan, so I'm gonna sound like a hater. I'm gonna sound like a hater. I'm gonna say this. Going back to her dad being shot, the question I was going to ask you, actually, like I said, I forgot, but the question that I was going to ask you was, now, do you think that was just a simple robbery, or do you think that was some of his demons coming back? Somebody was coming to get him?
Oh, I absolutely think it was that. And I think the thing is, you can only go through life, no matter what it is. You can only go out kind of living you can only go through life living recklessly for so long before it catches up with you. And it doesn't have to be like some deep conspiracy, because it could have been something as simple as all these women he was running around with, maybe one of their husbands or family members or whatever, maybe one of them to say like, you know what, I'm over this, and decided to run in and just like take care of it. It could have been
right, because they were clear to show us that he was still out in them streets. Yeah. Like they made it clear that he was still out in them streets, doing stuff in the streets. So they were clear to let us know that. So it was just curious to me, whether, because I know those were some of the rumors too, like about, because they never did catch who did it, right?
I don't think they did. I don't think they ever.
I don't think they ever found out who did it. I don't think they ever found. I don't know that to be a fact. But I don't think they did. Yeah. Definitely not a simple robbery, and he suffered until the end. Yeah, I mean, because again, my thing is, if it was a robbery, they ain't take nothing.
Not from what I saw.
I mean, maybe they got scared after the shootout, and they were like, "Oh shoot, we gotta get out of here," but they ain't take nothing.
Yeah. Also, I guess as we're kind of winding down, I was going to ask you, because I meant to mention this earlier, but I kind of got caught up in the conversation.
No problem.
Do you know who Aretha originally wanted to portray her?
I thought she originally wanted Jennifer. She didn't. Who did she want? Whitney? Child, Halle Berry.
Yep.
I think I do remember reading that somewhere.
And I literally remember, because I was like kind of following that story, because I remember seeing that. I was like, oh, is this like a joke? And she was serious. And so Halle Berry was kind of like, oh, well, I can't sing. That was kind of her way of being like, oh, I wouldn't be good for the role because I can't sing. And so then Aretha,
they would have ate her ass up.
Right. And so then Aretha was like, oh, well, plenty of actors and actresses, they lip sync. And so I think in the nicest, seriously, because I can only imagine. I think Halle Berry knows herself well enough to know that she was not the right person for that role. And I think she was trying.
And I can respect that she didn't. See, I wish she had known she wasn't the right person to play fucking Storm.
Oh gosh. Oh well, that's interesting in and of itself, because originally it was going to be Angela Bassett, but stuff with the money and the managers and the way it worked out, she ended up not doing it.
I always wanted it to be Iman.
I know. Yeah. Iman.
Because I used to read the comic books, and when I was younger, and when they first started talking about a movie, I was like, Iman.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
But as far as Halle Berry, she was trying to like, I appreciate it, but I want to make sure your legacy is respected. And I genuinely think that I'm not the best person for that.
Wait a minute, when did Halle become her cousin? I ain't never. You heard that before? I never heard that. I didn't know that.
I wasn't aware of that. If that's true,
I mean, I'm not saying it's not true. I never heard that before.
Yeah, I hadn't either. I might have missed that. Sorry, what was I saying? But yeah, she just kind of finally was trying to bow out gracefully. And I remember Aretha saying something like, when they were discussing like who should play her in the film, she was like, are you sure? How did you feel about Halle Berry? She was just like, I mean, that's who I wanted, but ultimately I need somebody who has more confidence, to play the role. And I'm like, it's not about confidence. She's literally saying I'm not the right person. It's just like,
right, like I'm not that's not mine. That's not for me. What God has for me is for me, and that ain't for me. Like, that's not for me.
Yeah, it's just like when Little Kim had a beef with Notori Naughton because she thought Christina Milian should portray her, and I'm kind of like, is this a colorism thing? Like, you guys, like, I don't know what you guys are seeing, but it's like, I think you have I understand that you're not always going to look just like the person you're portraying, but I feel like if you go out of your way to want Halle Berry and then Christina Milian to play these women who are very distinctly brown-skinned women, I'm just kind of like, what's going on here?
Child. It is very interesting. You heard that Aretha and Jennifer are distant cousins. Now, they might be, because, Jennifer's from Detroit, so they might be connected through marriage, second cousin, uncle, mother, cousin, or something. I don't know. But they might. I would believe that they're distant cousins, because I could see, being in Detroit on the black side of town, somewhere along the line, I could see there being some sort of a hookup somewhere in the family. But anyway, child, yeah, Simone Biles says she wants Zendaya to play her.
There's another one.
What? Girl, you are 5. Like, is Simone even 5 feet tall?
Barely, if she is.
Girl, anyway, moving on, people. Moving on. I'm not doing this with y'all tonight. But ultimately, that somebody just said in the comments that they would love to see a Diana Ross biopic. I'm going to say this about the Diana Ross biopic. I think if there were to be a Diana Ross biopic, I think we would run into the same situation we ran into with Aretha. I think we would run into Diana Ross telling her story, and there being another, because the Call Her Miss Ross biography by J. Randy Tabarelli was so good.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Oh my gosh, they told some stuff, baby.
Oh wow,
so good. I mean, he went back and he interviewed people from the Motown days, and they talked about how just the type of person she was. I mean, she was very much a by any means necessary. I don't care who I got to step on. I don't care who, how it's gonna happen. I think as Diana Ross has gotten older, she's been more willing to tell some of her secrets. But remember, Diana Ross denied a lot of stuff that she has now come back and said, okay, yeah, it happened. Okay, yeah, I did that. So for a long time, she didn't really want to tell her story. So it would be, but I think we would run into the same problem, because what ends up happening is people for the people, this, but for people who may not understand how this happens, when somebody writes a book, a movie company will buy the rights to that book. And what happened in the case, and then you see them racing to tell the story. And what happened with Aretha was that there were 2 different books, and they bought the screenplay or whatever, and they bought the rights to be able to tell the story, and it was basically a race to who could get it done first and who would get the better deal. Aretha, the Respect version, is the one that got the major motion picture deal, but the Genius version got the sort of mini-series deal. And I think we probably would run into the same thing with Diana Ross, that we would see I'll say, for lack of a better word, the sanitized version versus the more salacious version. So, but yeah, J. Randy Tabarelli's version is really good. I haven't read it in a long time. I read it when it first came out, so that lets you know how long ago it was. But some of the stories, you were like, whoa. Right. Mary Wilson's book was good, but Mary Wilson's book really focused on just the story of the Supreme. So it was good, and she told a lot of what happened and the dirty dealings about, how Diana Ross sort of did them as a group, and especially between her and Florence. But there was a lot more in J. Randy Tabarelli's book about a lot of the dealings. Like I'm gonna say, we're gonna get off of here in a minute, but I'll say like this one story where Diana Ross was sleeping with, we know now, but Diana Ross was sleeping with Berry Gordy. And there was a story about Berry Gordy's wife showing up on the road and Diana Ross having to hide in the closet all night because his wife showed up. And it was just, and it was like the next day, the fight that the two of them had after his wife left. And like, it was like a knockdown. She was throwing stuff at his head, like just the fight. It was a lot. It was another story about Diana Ross. It was another, not Stevie Wonder, but it was another kid that had a visual disability that had been signed to Motown. It wasn't Stevie Wonder, it was somebody else. And how Diana Ross almost ran him over one night. I forgot why she was mad at the little boy, but the little boy did something. And she was driving the car and she almost hit that little boy. And at the last minute, either somebody jerked the wheel or she at the last minute jerked the wheel. But of course the boy couldn't see, so he didn't even know the car was coming.
Oh, wow.
But that was like in the early days of Motown. That was when they were still, the early days. But I forgot the little boy had done something. I don't remember what it was now, but I just remember that part of the story because I was like, so she was about to go to jail? Like, but they were talking about her temper. They said that Diana Ross had always had a temper. Always had a temper. So Diana Ross was like Beyonce back in the day, I hear. I would say she was worse than Beyonce.
From what I've heard.
Yeah. And the only reason why I say that is because I think a lot of Beyonce, it, for as much as y'all know I ain't the biggest Beyonce fan, but a lot of Beyonce gets blamed for a lot of stuff that I think was her father. Whereas Diana Ross, it was Diana Ross.
Yeah. I agree.
It was Diana Ross. Like, like even her, even her being pregnant with Berry Gordy's daughter and passing it off as the white man's daughter all them years, like stories like that. What I'm saying?
My mother told me about that. I don't know how many years ago that was, and I was like, I could, that one took me back.
Right. So it's I would be here for it, but I honestly think I would want maybe a mixture of Mary Wilson's book and J. Randy Tabarelli's book.
Right.
A mixture of the two.
Yeah.
Versus like her version, because I don't know, Yeah,
that was gonna say that reminds me of kind of the situation, the whole like how they portray themselves. That reminds me of Lady Sings the Blues, ironically, starring Diana Ross. But I want to say that story. It was either the book that it was based on. I think it has to do more so with the book. But Louis McKay, I think, had some kind of influence either on the book or the production. And so that's why in the film he's portrayed, Billy D. Williams, like he's kind of the savior of her life.
Right.
Kind of one of those things where, in a what if scenario, you can kind of see that work. Like, what if this person was there present, but she was still like you could in your mind kind of see it that way. But Louis McKay couldn't have been any different from how he was portrayed in that film. And it's like,
right, because wasn't he like a pimp or a drug dealer too? Like he wasn't a good guy
at all.
Yeah, baby. But I would definitely be here for it. Like I said at the beginning of this, I love biographies. I love reading biographies. I love seeing movies and documentaries on. I just love seeing like the extraordinary things that people go through. But I'm here for I'm here for more stories. I'm here for more stories, honey. How did she ruin the Wiz though? She ruined the Wiz because her ass was 40 years old playing damn 18-year-old Dorothy, and Berry Gordy stole that role from Stephanie Mills to give to Diana Ross because she was his concubine and he was trying to make her a movie star. That is how she ruined the Wiz.
That's it.
I'm still mad about that. Still mad about that. Stole that role from damn Stephanie Mills. That was supposed to be Stephanie Mills' role.
It was.
And her ass 40 years old playing damn Dorothy. It's a photo through the damn snow.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but I will say I love Mahogany and I love Lady Sings the Blues.
I have to watch
her in The Wiz.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I love Lady Sings the Blues. I think I need to rewatch Mahogany because I just remember a scene where she's in the car with the guy. I think Anthony Perkins is the actor, but the guy who was like he basically had the car running to like high speeds.
Yeah, and he took all them pictures of her before he tried to kill her.
She was like, oh, pose. She was like,
right.
And then they end up crashing. I was like, what is that? Scared the mess out of me. I was not
right.
But that's a good one. And I was just gonna say in regards to Aretha Franklin, my introduction to her, I think even before Respect, was because she had like we're talking about her success in the 90s, but Waiting to Exhale, which is easily the best of all time. No arguments, no disagreements on that. Best, one of the best, soundtracks ever.
It's definitely one of the best. Definitely one of the best.
But my introduction to her was It Hurts Like Hell. That album and that song, the lyrics, the way she sings it, that was my introduction to her.
She sang that thing like she knew about heartbreak, which now we know she definitely knew. Right. But she sang that thing. Woo! She sang that thing. That's we can have a whole nother conversation on movie soundtracks because that absolutely is one of the best. In my generation, I'll put it that way. It was definitely one of the best. Well, a couple of things before we get ready to close it out. First of all, Ebby, thank you so much to all my mods, but Ebby has been dropping Movieman's link throughout the chat. So please make sure you guys are subscribed to his channel. Y'all go check him out. Really quick, I want to share something with you guys that I meant to share yesterday. Really quick, let me share this with you guys. Y'all know that this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, October. Yesterday, of course, kicking off Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Hold on. Let me do this. Rostaclat, y'all know that I support Rostaclat and the brand. A friend of mine is an ambassador. They have their Shop for the Cause pink breast cancer bracelets. Of course, they're going to be donating $1 from every sale. So please go on over to Rostaclat to, breast cancer research. Please go on over to Rostaclat and order you. You see they have 4 different types, honey. They have men's versions. They got the women's versions. And so you can go on and get you one. And please make sure that if you go over there, use the discount code Juggernaut. Juggernaut. What is it? Is it Juggernaut? Is it just Juggernaut, Ebby? Is that the discount code? Is it just Juggernaut? I think that's it. If it doesn't work, let me know. I'll give y'all the but I think it's Juggernaut. So please y'all go on over there. One, support the cause and go ahead and support my boy Juggernaut of Souls and get you 20% off of the sale. So I wanted to say that. And y'all thank y'all for being here. Y'all been rocking with us. We've been here for 2 hours. So y'all been rocking with us. And I thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for coming. I asked and you were like, absolutely. And we're going to have you over again. We're going to have you to hang out with us some more.
I would love that. I welcome this. I wanted to tell you really quickly that my mom, I think I'm going to say she started watching like maybe a year or 2 ago. And she's always had great things to say about it. Yeah, she was like, you got to check out ReallyBTV.
Oh, so, tell your mama I said hey.
Yeah. And then, given how 2020 was and 2021, she would have, we would drive and she would have your lives on. And so, and given how, it was very emotionally and mentally taxing, 2020 and all that. And I'm very honest, like whenever she would have your lives on for me, because I've had to, do a lot of healing from that year. But watching you and listening to you, it just kind of reminds how you have like a family friend or a family member that's just very relatable, very down to earth. It's just like, you feel kind of like at home or you just feel comforted. Well, I think listening that helped me in its own way.
Thank you.
That's also why I appreciate it.
You never know. You just never know. You never know. Well, thank you so much. And definitely tell your mom I said, hey. And thank you. That's gonna sit with me. That's definitely gonna sit with me. Yeah, I appreciate that. Oh wow, see, now y'all got me all choked up. But thank you so much. And we're gonna go ahead and shut this down. I'm gonna go find me something to eat. It's almost 9 o'clock, honey. I ain't even ate no dinner. But I'm gonna go find me something to eat. But thank you guys, and I will see y'all. If I probably won't see y'all tomorrow because we're taking it's Niecy's birthday and we're taking Niecy out to dinner. So I probably won't see y'all tomorrow. But y'all know what will be on Monday. I'm not sure whose channel it's going to be on Monday. It's either going to be on Sakina's channel or Giving You the Real Tea. But the panel will definitely be here on Monday night. And I will see y'all then. Everybody, have a good evening.